Hello Internet, and welcome to my channel. I'm Chameleon X, and if you're subscribed to as many D&D related channels as I am, you might be aware that this is Kraken Week. As part of a massive collaboration organized by Antonio D'Amico and Ginny D, over 50 YouTube content creators in the TTRPG space have come together to make videos centered around the theme of aquatic adventures, including sea monsters, sailing, naval combat rules, and more. I am not one of those content creators officially, as I was not contacted. I just heard about it from watching other people's content, but it's okay, I'm not salty. I only have like 100 subscribers, so I doubt massive channels like D&D Shorts or XP to level 3 even know I exist.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because...
But anyway, even though I wasn't officially invited, I figured this was a good opportunity to act on an idea I've had rattling around in my brain meat for a while. Back when I did my Fallout conversion video, I briefly touched on some ways you can take monsters from the Fallout franchise and convert them into 5e, but I didn't really provide a ton of examples of that. I did include some robots in the PDF linked in that video, but that was mostly just companions for the Artificer. So, in honor of Kraken Week, I'm going to provide actual 5th edition compatible stat blocks for the most iconic aquatic monster in the most recent Fallout games, the Mirelurk. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first encounter most players had with the Mirelurk is in the early hours of Fallout 3, as part of Moira Brown's Wasteland Survival Guide questline. In the later chapters, Moira tasks you with infiltrating the Anchorage War Memorial, which has become utterly infested with the subjects of this video. It turns out that a few enterprising wastelanders have been trying to farm these creatures with the intent of raising and butchering Mirelurks as livestock and selling the highly prized meat to local merchants. Mirelurk meat, you see, is a delicacy in the wasteland, despite their flesh having the texture of, and I quote, vulcanized rubber. Apparently, when the only other things you have to eat are dog food and ass jerky, a bit of chewy seafood really hits the spot. Anyway, according to the information provided in the games, the standard Mirelurk, Silas aurata, is a cross-species hybrid between the Atlantic blue crab and horseshoe crab, presumably facilitated by atmospheric contamination by the FEV. The name Mirelurk evidently applies to several other creatures that are clearly not the same species, despite sharing a few basic characteristics. People in the wasteland, for obvious reasons, don't seem to be all that concerned with proper cladistic analysis. Apart from the horrendous subspecies, we have the Mirelurk hunter, which in Fallout 3 is basically just a beefier version of the crab-type lurk, while in Fallout 4 it's a totally different creature that is clearly based on a lobster. The Mirelurk king in both games is very clearly a reptilian or amphibian creature, not an arthropod. Though there are some pretty stark differences in the depiction across generations, I'm willing to say the Fallout 3 and 4 kings are probably the same creature, just with updated graphics and a slightly more unique design. More Lovecraft and less Shape of Water. Fallout 4 introduces the Mirelurk Queen and Hatchling, the latter of which were referenced in the earlier games but never shown directly. It also adds the Razor Claw and Kill Claws, as well as glowing ones, which are pretty much just progressively more powerful varieties of the standard lurk. Fallout New Vegas includes Lake Lurks, which are, interestingly, identical to Mirelurk Kings from Fallout 3, implying that this species originally migrated from the West Coast. Mirelurks in all of the games seem to be quite susceptible to mutation based on chemicals in their environment, as regional variants like the Blood Rage Mirelurk, Nukalurks, and Swamp Lurks are all examples of standard Mirelurks that have been transformed by exposure to some kind of toxin or mutagenic compound that changes their appearance and makes them more aggressive. A few consistent threads across all the games are that all of the invertebrate lurks are equipped with thick armored shells that protect them from a wide range of attacks, as well as their unusual reactions to high-frequency sound, and particularly white noise. Some have theorized that the Mirelurk King, who in all depictions has been shown to have a weaponized sonic pulse ability, uses sound waves to pacify and control these otherwise unrelated creatures, compelling them to attack together as a single cohesive group. Mirelurks are implied on several occasions to be surprisingly intelligent for crustaceans. They have a complex social structure which, once again, seems to incorporate multiple species acting in a symbiotic partnership. and seem to have some potential to problem solve, be trained to perform simple tasks, and they can even be seen to withdraw and run for backup if they get into a sticky situation. They are also in some sense aware of the vulnerability of their unarmored face and seem to intentionally keep their head low when attacking to make it harder for foes to target their weak point. Some in-game dialogue even suggests that Mirelurks might be capable of learning to understand and follow simple verbal commands, similar to a canine, although the source for that information wound up being eaten by his crabby pets, so maybe take that last one with a grain of salt. Interestingly, a terminal in Nahant in Fallout 4 also strongly implies that Mirelurks existed in some form before the bombs dropped, having been mutated by exposure to nuclear waste pumped into the bay by corporations like General Atomics and Poseidon Energy. There are no visuals accompanying these entries, however, so we can't know exactly how similar these first lurks were to the ones we see in the present day. Starting in Fallout 4, all Mirelurks share a fairly consistent preference for ambush tactics. All of the common types of Mirelurks will bury themselves in mud or sand.
I don't like sand.
When at rest, bursting from the ground to attack when prey comes near. Even the humongous Mirelurk Queen is very fond of hiding herself from view, only emerging when she senses that her children have been slain and thus her entire brood is in danger. The Mirelurk Kings, while they don't bury themselves, have an actual cloaking field similar to a stealth boy that they will use to sneak up on prey and take them by surprise. Hell, even the hatchlings fit the mold, bursting out of their eggs to make a surprise attack when enemies draw too close. So yeah, overall, a much more effective and distinctive strategy than Fallout 3's approach of run directly at the guy with the gun and hit it until one of you dies. Okay, so now that we know what a Mirelurk is in the Fallout video games, how do we bring these creatures into 5th edition D&D? Well, you don't have to, because I already did that, link in the description, but just for fun, let's go over how I did it. First of all, I started with the basic stat block of a giant crab. I also gave them a substantial boost to their intelligence, with the Mirelurk Kings and Queens in particular being as intelligent as a primate. I gave them the Ambusher trait and proficiency in stealth, and most varieties also have the Shell Camouflage trait, which allows the lurk to hide in the sand.
It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Or mud and pretend to be a pile of trash. The standard battle tactics for these monsters is going to be hide, wait until the enemy gets close, then pop out and try to grab the target and beat them to death. The Mirelurk Hunter, based off the lobster form in Fallout 4, has an acidic spittle attack that deals ongoing damage at range, allowing them to act as artillery to support other Mirelurks who are engaged in melee. The Mirelurk Queen is a CR-16 boss-level threat with legendary actions, resistances, and the ability to spawn hatchlings, which act under her control. I also gave her some abilities not present in the games, like a powerful bite attack that deals damage over time, but can only be used on a creature she's grabbing, as well as the power to throw a creature or object she's holding to generate some extra damage as a bonus action. She can also command nearby Mirelurks to attack using her legendary actions and unleash a thunderous roar that deafens and possibly stuns all creatures around her, which is inspired by the sonic blast of the Mirelurk King. Also included in the document are a few variant templates that you can apply to the other Mirelurks presented to make them more powerful. The Nukalurk is an upgraded version of the base creature that deals extra force damage and basically gets the rogue's uncanny dodge feature. It's obviously meant to represent a lurk that's been mutated by bathing in Nuka-Cola Quantum, but you can easily change that force damage to poison and make it a swamp lurk or another variant that's been infused with toxic chemicals. The glowing one, as the name implies, is a radioactive Mirelurk that produces an aura that inflicts exhaustion on anyone that ends its turn within. Combined with its ambush tactics and ability to grab targets with a successful claw attack, this makes the glowing Mirelurk a very deadly threat, especially for melee combatants who are now going to be very motivated not to get near this thing. The key defensive feature that all of these Mirelurks share is their thick shell, represented by resistance to non-magical weapon damage. This means that, much like in the video games, Mirelurks are extremely deadly to low-level adventurers who don't have access to powerful weapons that can penetrate their defenses. However, I also incorporated their characteristic weak point, their unprotected face. Any creature making an attack against the Mirelurk can choose to take a penalty to the attack roll as a result of aiming for a small moving target, but on a hit, their attack ignores the Lurk's damage resistances. This gives the players an interesting choice between gambling on hitting the monster's already high AC or going for a more reliable body shot that will do significantly less damage. Finally, in order to model the Mirelurk's susceptibility to white noise, I just gave them all vulnerability to thunder damage. If you think this makes them too weak, like for example, if everyone in your party can cast Thunder Wave and or Shatter, you can remove the vulnerability and instead make it so that taking thunder damage inflicts the frightened condition on them for a turn, and forces them to flee as if under the effects of Turn Undead. Now, if you're not playing in a Fallout-themed campaign, that doesn't mean you can't still use these stat blocks in your game. For the flavor text included in the PDF, I tried to keep the lore as setting neutral as possible, so that even though the inspiration is immediately obvious to anyone who's familiar with the Fallout series, you could still drop these things into almost any fantasy setting and still have it make sense. Lore-wise, the Mirelurk is essentially a normal crab or similar arthropod that has been horrifically mutated by exposure to alien energies and or strange alchemical substances. You can very easily have them be the result of an experiment by an unscrupulous wizard or a deranged artificer, or an incidental byproduct of magical contamination, perhaps by a nearby portal to the abyss, far realm corruption, or some other extraplanar influence. Because of their above-average intelligence for a beast, you could also have a villain in your campaign purposely raising these things as disposable minions or shock troops. As beasts, spells like Animal Friendship and other druidic magic would allow a spellcaster to control a small army of Mirelurks and use them to accomplish their nefarious ends. Of course, their creature type also means that your party druid could have a new favorite wild shape form on their hands, so if this is a problem for you, feel free to make them monstrosities or aberrations if you feel like that would be too much of a headache at the table. On the other hand, maybe an enemy transmuter polymorphs someone into a Mirelurk and watches them go ballistic on their friends and loved ones, and the party has to figure out how to deal with the threat without dealing enough overflow damage to kill the NPC once he changes back. Or, you can always just plop these guys into a random encounter in a swamp or coastal environment. They're similar enough to the kinds of monsters you would normally fight in D&D that unless you specifically use the name Mirelurk, your players might not even realize where you're pulling these guys from. However you want to use these creatures, I hope you enjoy them. This video was a bit of a rush job to make it out in time for Kraken Week, so if there's anything I didn't cover, or you want me to make a follow-up video, leave your requests down in the comments. I'm hoping to make this into a regular series of not just Fallout, but of creatures from all kinds of different media, as well as providing content for other systems like Pathfinder or DC-20. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know what kind of content you want to see in the future. Until then, I've been Chameleon X, reminding you to...
Release the Kraken!